President Bola Tinubu's recent directive to sell crude oil to Dangote Petroleum Refinery in Naira marks a significant shift in Nigeria's oil industry. This move, announced by the Special Adviser to the President on Information and Publicity, Bayo Onanuga, has, however, generated both commendations and criticism. The directive comes at a time the Nigerian oil and gas sector has been enmeshed in several controversies, and it is hoped that these will in turn bring the needed stability in the sector and the economy. Femi Oladehin, of course, from Argentil Partners, senior partner, Argentil Partners, joins me for more on this.
Hi, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Good to have you. What do you make of the decision of the federal government to sell crude oil to indigenous refineries, including Dangote, in Naira?
Look, there's something that I've always said with governance, that one of the key drivers of effective governance is knowing when to pivot. I think that the decision to start to look at local companies and understand the futility of having local companies who generate their revenues in Naira, pay dollars for their input costs is something that never made any sense from the beginning. We always put pressure on the NNPC to pay US dollars for crude, the same crude that it was selling for Naira. So where was the dollars going to come from? It was continuously going to put a lot of pressure on the economy itself. I think that this is a positive move because first point is it means that companies that are operating refineries in Nigeria don't have to go looking for scarce foreign exchange, being able to acquire their input costs. That also means that such companies, obviously, depending on what tracking to the exchange rate is done on the Naira part, can actually now start to look at long-term Naira obligations rather than long-term dollar obligations. Of course, as you know, one of the biggest problems we've had in the last 12 to 18 months has been significant depletion of our reserves as a result of very poor availability of FX. That has changed now. We have a situation where companies like Dangote and probably the NNPC refineries have to actually look for Naira, which is cheaper in the long run, for them to be able to pay for their crude. Now, we also know that the Federation account is a Naira account. So the normal or the usual thing where we exchange dollars for Naira just means that that disappears from our economy, and it can only be positive.
Well, some have actually expressed skepticism about this, saying they would rather this be thought through and data-based. And for them, crude oil is Nigeria's biggest source of foreign exchange. And they wonder what this means for the economy in that regard. What do you think about this?
Look, I think it's misplaced fears. The reality is, think about this. Prior to now, NNPC was the one who bought Nigerian crude. NNPC had to go and source dollars, usually by scrounging from IOCs and buying from the open market to pay Nigeria, which is the central bank, dollars for the products. Then the central bank goes around and sells that same dollars to other users of FX and receives Naira from them and pays it into the Federation account. It's a meaningless cycle that just introduces layers of costs. Because at each point where you trade that currency, there are bid offer spreads that are being, taken advantage of by traders in the market. What we are doing now is circumventing those inefficiencies that we introduced into the market and using those inefficiencies to improve the differential for the local market. Again, remember that the end game for government of actually institutionalizing the 450,000 barrels, which is actually it's a law, was to ensure that they could guarantee local supply. So what we're saying is, if you're focused on guaranteeing local supply, then sell the crude to the local suppliers in Naira, and knowing that the output of those refineries is going to come to Nigeria. Now, let me say this. In the event that these refiners actually export the the output of the crude, which is their petroleum products, to international markets, Nigeria as a country benefits because you have an inflow of foreign exchange. as against what we have now, where we're not doing any form of value add on the Naira side, and we're carrying dollar exposures. So I think people who are reticent about this is just the general mistrust of government. But I think that if you look at this from an economic point of view, this should actually be beneficial to the local refineries, as well as help in strengthening the Naira as well.
Well, another concern apart from this particular one is the volume of crude oil NNPC can actually make available to Dangote and other local refineries, saying that NNPC is committed to some organizations, whether it's a JV plan or debt repayment. Do we have clarity on what is left? I mean, clearly put, do we know if the crude meant for local consumption had not been used to acquire loans?
That's a very difficult question to answer. But yes, that has been a concern for everyone on the market. We know, for example, that a significant number of barrels have been pledged by NNPC to backstop loans that have been taken prior to now. One of those was Project Gazelle that closed earlier on in the year. And we know that those barrels would, the cash required to pay those loans is actually in US dollars. But I think that it's important that we separate the two of them. There are barrels that are local barrels, which are the Federation account barrels. Those barrels are the ones in contention right now. I don't believe that NNPC had the powers to do anything with the Federation account barrels other than to trade them for local products. So I believe that what NNPC will be doing now is exactly not different from what they were doing before. Remember when we had the DSDP arrangement? The DSDP arrangement was that NNPC was exchanging these 425,000 barrels for imported products. So they were again not selling for dollars. They were basically delivering crude to people, and those people were sending them petroleum products on a dollar-for-dollar basis. So I don't believe that this worsens NNPC's position in any way. What is just happening is that the products that were swapped for petroleum products in the past were literally just saying that those products are now swapped for Naira, and then that Naira would be used to buy products from Dangote's refinery. I think the big question we should be asking is that will Dangote and other refineries accept Naira payments for the petroleum products that are coming from them? The moment that they accept Naira payments, then Nigeria should be indifferent. In fact, we should actually say that we should be able to get some level of savings from having the Dangote refinery produce for us as a country.
Well, we'll see about that in the coming days. The oil and gas industry has been immersed in controversy in the past few weeks. I mean, what do you make of them, and which is more concerning to you?
Look, the oil and gas industry is an important industry in Nigeria. It is the biggest export earner for us. So there's always going to be concerns if there is any form of opaqueness in the operation of that industry. Now, prior to now, when the NNPC was a corporation, we always complained about the fact that the NNPC was a player in the market and was also the regulator. Now that has changed. The NNPC is now just a player in the market, and there are other regulators. Now, there are all sorts of allegations that have been flying around as to where the biggest chunk of our imports are coming from, and refineries in Malta and all of that. In all honesty, I think it's a bit nonsensical. The reality is that Nigeria has been a net importer of petroleum products, and people have, built structures around that net importation. Nigerians have invested in refineries, Nigerians have invested in tank farms, trading companies have made long-term bets on the basis of Nigeria's reliance on imported products. Now, to unwind all of that, you would imagine that there's going to be some level of resistance because no one wants launch taken away from them. But what fundamentally we should be concerned about is that where is value being created in the Nigerian market? Dangote's refinery has come on board. Nigerians need to support it and make sure it's successful. The NNPC is currently doing a turnaround maintenance for some of its refineries. We are hopeful, it depends on how you see that those refineries are going to come on stream. So easily think about this. We're saying that in the next year, Nigeria could potentially have 1 million barrels of potential refining capacity. That has to be positive because it means that we're now exporting to the international market and products that we've been importing for the past 15 to 20 years. That has to be positive. So the demands from Nigerians has to be increased transparency on the market. But let's be clear on something. All of the NNPC interventions that we've seen prior to now have always been based on open international tenders. And whoever has won those tenders have won it on the basis of either having financial capacity or refining capacity. So the fact that people are surprised that Nigerians have invested in refineries or some form of blending plants, for me, is actually ridiculous. One of the conditions upon which you could participate in DSDP arrangements prior to now was you had to have refining capacity. So why are you shocked that people have gone to invest in refining capacity?
You know, let me come in here. I mean, there are concerns about the quality of petroleum products imported into Nigeria. It's not just about some blending capacity, but also about the quality. And this is even as controversy continues, you know, to trail the sudden increase in Nigeria's imports from Malta. So what more do we need to know about this, really? I want you to speak to this.
Yes, what I'm saying to you, in essence, is that it's actually nonsensical. We've been importing from different parts of the world over the last 20 years simply because our refineries have not been working. Now, that isolating Malta for me is disingenuous. The reality is that at some point we were importing petrol from Ivory Coast because Ivory Coast had a working refinery. Secondly, the point I was making earlier on was that the NNPC in the past, during the DSDP arrangements, had specific conditions upon which you could actually trade NNPC crude. One of those conditions was that you had to be invested in a refinery or in an advanced blending plant. What I'm saying in essence is that if Nigerian corporates have gone ahead to invest in refineries outside of Nigeria, it was in fulfillment of a requirement by the NNPC. So there was nothing overhand or underhand about it. However, what we should be concerned about as Nigeria is, did we get value? And I think that's where the National Assembly comes to play. That were there any instances where Nigeria was shortchanged as a result of these contracts, then let the National Assembly investigate it. But we created an inefficient structure as a country by letting our refineries go to rot. Local businessmen and international businessmen, took advantage of us as a country. And what we should be doing to fix it is to do the kind of things we're doing now. Support our local refiners so that all those guys who went and made bets against Nigeria, they lose out, they lose money. And that's their loss. That's what business is all about.
Well, talking about this, I mean, you said that they saw an opportunity, but why didn't they see that opportunity in Nigeria? Why did they have to, go to other places to set up these refineries?
But you've seen exactly what has happened to Dangote's refinery in the last few years. That's enough reason for you to wonder why people don't want to invest in the Nigerian economy. The Nigerian economy is a very flippant economy. Our policymakers change their minds on a regular basis. So if you are looking to make long-term investments, Nigeria is actually a difficult place to invest in. And what we've been saying, even from the previous government, is that Nigerian government has to ease the rules around doing business in Nigeria. All of the constraints that are artificial constraints that we've introduced that has made people who are wealthy enough to invest look at other markets. We need to remove those constraints and make it easy for people to invest in the Nigerian market and the Nigerian economy. The moment you do that, trust me, there's something I always say. Capital is always looking for returns at the lowest risk. The moment you can guarantee people that they're going to get returns and that their risk is manageable, they're going to come to your market. I mean, in my role as an investment banker, I have midwifed a number of significant transactions in the oil and gas industry, and my company has done that as well in the last 10 years. All of those guys have come to Nigeria believing that Nigeria is a vibrant market. Some of them have left simply because policy flip-flops and inconsistent policy decisions. What we're saying is that once we fix that, the Nigerian population, the Nigerian dynamics is actually a very deep enough market for investors to want to be in. And that's what we're challenging our regulators and the government to focus their attention on. Support Nigerian businesses, support international businesses, such that on a fair basis, on a regular basis, on a regulated basis, they're able to do business here, generate revenues, generate income for the country, and then we can tax them and we'll benefit in the long run.
Well, Femi Oladehin, interesting Thoughts right there. I guess we'll have to talk about this some other time. But then that really didn't answer the question on the quality that is allowed into the country.
Sorry. So we talked about
no,
quality.
we don't have to take that now. That was why I said we'll talk
fine.
about this some other time. Thank you so much, Femi Oladehin,
No problem.
Senior Partner,
Thank you
Argentil
for having
Capital
me.
Partners, for your thoughts today.
Thank you.